it be nice for the Conservative Party of Canada to come down to earth and leave La La Land for a little while?
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Well, Liberal math for that anti-Alberta minister says that jacking up the carbon tax 20% is somehow going to fix forest fires and reduce the...
I'm going to just ask the honourable member to start from the top again and just to rephrase it slightly on that front. The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn, from the top.
Liberal math says jacking up the carbon tax 23% is going to somehow magically fix forest fires and reduce the cost of groceries like that Edith can't afford. And they think we're gullible and incompetent like the NDP, that we'd blindly support policies that made 2 million Canadians go into a food bank in a single month.
Now I'm going to recognize the honourable member from Edmonton with Wetaskiwin, who is rising on a point of order.
Yeah, thank you.
From question period.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier today in question period, one of my Alberta colleagues, the member from Calgary Forest Lawn, in asking a question, used the phrase anti-Alberta minister in reference to the environment minister. And you asked him to rephrase his question. Now, a simple Google search shows that over the years, members of all four recognized parties in this House have used the phrase anti-Alberta or anti-Quebec in standing up for their constituents in ways that their constituents would expect them to stand up. I think that we're not better off in this House when the list of words we can't use gets longer and longer and longer and longer, and I think that we suffer from a lack of clarity right now as we make efforts as members of Parliament to stand up for our constituents. I'd like some clarification on what language we can and can't use, because it seems to have changed significantly over the past several months.
I'd like to thank the honourable member from Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, for raising this issue. What was going through the chair's mind on this issue, of course, is that people can have policies or they could have ideas which you might characterize as one thing or the other. The thing that caught me, and I will get back to the member on this, is whether or not you should attribute that to an honourable member. And so that is something which I will review, and I thank the honourable member for raising it, and I will come back to the House on this point. Point of order. On the same point of order, the chair is going to come back to the House on this, but well, I'm going to ask for a very short intervention from the member from Kingston Islands on this point, because we are going to come back to the House on this point.
To say that I do agree with the member in what he said, and in particular I would bring to the attention of the chair that there is still a member of Parliament on this side of the House that hasn't spoken in about a month and a half because he accused Conservatives of being pro-Russia, and as a result your deputy asked him to withdraw. He didn't want to withdraw because he believed what he was saying was correct, and now as a result he hasn't been able to speak for about 6 weeks. So in your consideration about that, I would ask that you also consider whether or not it's appropriate to me making a statement like that, because I would agree with him that that would be limiting the words that you could use in this House.
Yeah. Well, that's completely different.
I will come back to I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I will consider that in coming back to the House. I'm now prepared to rule on the point of order raised on May 30th, 2024 by the member for Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, regarding unparliamentary language. During question period that day, the chair intervened after the member for Calgary Forest Lawn used the phrase anti-Alberta minister. In his point of order, the member for Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, asked the chair to clarify what constitutes unparliamentary language, because he asserted that the terms anti-Alberta and anti-Quebec have been used in the past with no objection from the chair. The member expressed concern that the list of unparliamentary terms is getting longer and longer. When the point of order was raised, I promised to review this issue. Il existe une foule de facteurs dont la
The chair must take into account a whole range of factors before forming an opinion on what members perceive as inappropriate language. I would refer members to page 623 of House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, and I quote, "The use of offensive, provocative or threatening language in the House is strictly forbidden. Personal attacks, insults and obscenities are not in order." Unquote.
Toutefois,
however, A little later, on page 624, that book states the following, and I quote, "In dealing with unparliamentary language, the speaker takes into account the tone, matter, and intention of the member speaking, the person to whom the words at issue are directed, the degree of provocation, and, most important, whether or not the remarks created disorder in the chamber," unquote.
In short, the chair is required, often in the heat of the action, to assess the content of remarks, but also take into account more subjective and contextual factors. As a result, a term found to be unparliamentary in one situation may not be considered unparliamentary in another. This may occur not because the chair is being inconsistent, but rather because the tone, intention, and reaction are different. Language found to be acceptable when used in a general sense may be unacceptable when it targets a specific person. The chair may be stricter to prevent a given situation from degenerating, while in other circumstances, the chair would be inclined to let the comment pass or issue a warning rather than rule it unparliamentary. Each case must be considered in its specific context.
It is true that the term anti-Alberta has been used without being deemed unparliamentary. However, calling a member or a minister anti-Alberta could fall into either category. In the moment, out of an abundance of caution perhaps, the chair directed the member for Calgary Forest Lawn to rephrase his question.
The second aspect of the member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin's point of order, the chair notes that no list of unparliamentary words exists, as indicated in House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, on page 624, and I quote, "Language deemed unparliamentary one day may not necessarily be deemed unparliamentary on another day," unquote. As I just explained, it all depends on the context, tone, and intention and reaction. The chair therefore encourages members to choose their words with care so that we can have vigorous debates without lapsing into incivility. I thank all members for their attention.